High Horror Society. It's the High Horror Society. Oh yeah. It's the High Horror Society. It's the
Hello and welcome to the High Horror Society, the first live edition of Live Horror
Yes.
Society. Hopefully one of many
Hopefully.
future live streams.
If this works.
If this works, if you can see. I don't know if anyone's watching, but that's okay.
That's
Damn it, we're
okay.
going to do it anyway.
That's
So
okay. We're recording it too, so it'll still be on Podbean.
we'll still
So-
put this up on Podbean on Friday like
Oh,
we
yeah.
always do
It's perfect.
for our dozens of fans.
Dozens of it works.
That's all right. So yes, welcome to the High Horror Society.
Welcome.
Tonight we watched The Exorcist 3 from 1990. So yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
It was a trip, and we're going to jump into it. But, okay, right away. So, Exorcist 3 was directed by William Peter Blatty. He wrote the first Exorcist, the novel,
Oh,
the
okay.
novel for this story,
All right.
the novelization of the Exorcist film, because
so
it was...
he knows a lot about the
Yes.
film and the whole everything about The Exorcist.
Yeah, he does. So
Perfect.
he's
So he's a perfect
he's
guy
well
for it.
versed on the subject. He also directed and wrote a movie called The Ninth Configuration, which I have a little side story about down
Ooh.
below,
All right.
down yonder.
Down there.
Obviously, this movie Exorcist 3 was written by William Peter Blatty. He did the screenplay and he did the novelization of this movie as well. The movie stars George C. Scott from Doctor Strangelove, Christmas Carol, most famous for Patton, which he won the award for.
I knew. I was
he
like,
won,
what is that guy in?
It was a little fun
Definitely
fact.
the Patton one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he is the first actor to actually refuse the Academy Award for Best Actor.
What?
Yeah.
Why?
He warned the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences months in advance that he would do so on philosophical grounds if he won. Scott believed that every dramatic performance was unique and could not be compared to others. So basically, like, hey,
That's
you
pretty cool.
can't like take everything for the year and say who did the best because each one has its own little nuances. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Also stars Ed Flanders,
Ned Flanders' brother.
Ned Flanders' brother. And then he's from St. Elsewhere, and he was actually nominated for 4 Emmys for
Oh,
St.
wow.
Elsewhere. Yeah, so
I never saw
who's
that
laughing
movie.
at his name now?
Me.
Jason Miller, who plays Father Karras, who was in the first movie as Father Karras. He
Yep.
reprised his role for this film. Scott Wilson, who played Herschel from The Walking Dead.
Oh,
He
that's right.
also played Captain Billy Cutshaw in The Ninth Configuration, and for which he won the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor for that.
Cool.
Yep, and like I said, I have a little tidbit about Ninth Configuration down below. It's going to
Can't
show
wait
up
for
a
that
couple times.
Tidbit.
Little tidbit. And then, obviously, the amazing Brad Dourif, who One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, who he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for that. Lord of the Rings, he played the little troll king
Oh, okay.
guy who was whispering in the king's ear. That was from the Two Towers, Lord of the Rings. And then, obviously, most famously, the voice of Chucky. So.
Yeah, that definitely stood out
Yeah,
in
he's
some
like,
parts
why
in
is
there.
Chucky yelling at this guy?
Oh,
So yes, so that kind of rounds out the cast. So again, Exorcist 3. It's a 1990 American horror film, written and directed by William Peter Blatty. It's the third installment in the Exorcist franchise. It's an adaptation of Blatty's novel Legion from 1983, and it stars all the folks that we mentioned above. And the little synopsis of the movie is: a police lieutenant uncovers more than he bargained for in his investigation of a series of murders, which all have the hallmarks of a deceased Gemini killer. Leads him to the questions. Jesus, I fucked it up already. Which of all the hallmarks of the deceased Gemini serial killer leads him to questions the patients of a psychiatric ward. So, and that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, definitely.
If you understood what I was saying after that jumbled ass sentence.
After me.
I'm not looking at the camera, I'm looking at the monitor. Great.
We're just looking back.
So
Where do we look?
again, this movie has a couple of taglines. Our movie last week had 4. Trick or Treat had 4 taglines,
Mhm.
which was the most we had seen, and this has 3.
Oh.
And they're kind of just as lame. I think we.
Darn, that
I
was
love poking fun at movie taglines because it's like
They
it's
are-
trying to sum up the movie in one sentence. And
Dude,
it's
that's
just
gotta
like,
be. Yeah, there's no
it's
way.
tough.
Like, how can you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the taglines, here we go. Number 1, do you dare walk these steps again? Obviously in reference to the
The fall-
stairs
yeah,
in The
falling.
Exorcist 1. And then Just Dare You Walk These Steps Again for number 2.
Oh, that doesn't
and
count.
then number 3, which is probably my favorite, The Horror is Legion.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's not
I
bad.
like that one.
I
better
could
than
deal
the
with that
other
one.
two.
At least it has some it goes back to the film and it's a reference to the demon being Legion and the Bible passage that he reads and stuff like that. So that's kind of nice.
That's
so
kind of
nice. So this movie is set 17 years after the original film, and apparently I didn't know this, but it ignores the events of Exorcist II: The Heretic. Thank fucking God.
I never saw it, so okay. But
It's awful.
It's awful.
Now, to be fair, the version I saw was like edited for television. It was on like TBS
that
at like
does
2 in the morning.
Change kind of a little bit, but still.
Okay, you could still tell if it's a dog shit movie or not, like
definitely.
just
Even
because
if
they cut
it's
out
on,
the swearing and
yeah.
the gore
Some
and
of the
stuff like
gore.
that. And I read up on it, and it is just awful. It's weird. I think we should just watch it just so we can round out the trilogy, because we've obviously seen Exorcists, and this is the third, so we'll finish it up in an awkward way and watch 2.
Is there more after the third?
Well, they did the 2 prequels, which are that's actually really interesting, because it's 2 movies that had 2 different directors and 2 different scripts, but the same premise. So and they made them both at the same time.
Oh.
That would make an interesting podcast, actually.
We could try that one too.
Yeah, I think.
All right.
No, so we're not going to spoil it,
No.
so we're done. All right. So this movie, Exorcist III, follows the characters from the first film. It's Lieutenant William Kinnerman, who investigates a series of satanic murders in Georgetown that have the hallmarks of the Gemini serial killer, who's a deceased serial killer. And the director actually based aspects of the Gemini killer on the real-life Zodiac killer, who apparently was a big fan of The Exorcist. So that's kind of weird. I don't know how I would feel if like it came out that a serial killer was a big fan of the podcast.
Yeah.
Like, I really love it, guys. It's like, oh Jesus.
We should really be best friends with that guy,
No,
so he doesn't hurt us.
We would need to reevaluate our life choices.
Just don't hurt us. Well, he's a fan. I mean, we got to treat him like a fan.
Oh, jeez, yeah. So Blatley, who wrote the original Exorcist novel, he also wrote the film the screenplay adaptation for it.
Okay.
And he conceived Exorcist III with the Exorcist director William Friedkin. He was actually attached to direct this third one. How cool would that have been, getting the original director and writer on board?
True.
But unfortunately, Friedkin had to leave the project, and Blatley adapted the screen. Blatley adapted the screen into his best-selling novel Legion in 1983. So from that, we get the movie Exorcist III.
I like that.
I like that. So it's kind of interesting. We talk about movies a lot, and we always talk about how there's more to the story of the movie than just the story that's being told on film. There's all this behind the scenes stuff, and that's kind of why it brings us to do this podcast. And this movie fits perfectly with that. The little story behind the story is kind of interesting. So apparently, let me see if I can get this right here. The Morgan Creek production company bought the film rights to the novel Legion. The director, when the movie was made, the director had some issues with it. Morgan Creek demanded like extensive last-minute changes on the movie.
That sucks.
The addition of an exorcism, so that whole sequence with the exorcism was all because of producer intervention.
Really?
Yeah. And then some thought that the original film was permanently lost, and actually Scream Factory released a director's cut closer to the director's vision in 2016 with footage assembled from various sources. And this story is kind of cool. So the way that it worked is Peter William Blatley's director's cut of The Exorcist was thought to be lost. No one knew where it was, and it was recovered and released in 2016 under its original title, Legion. So apparently there's a whole director's cut that we just don't really know a lot about.
Nobody knows about.
Well, no, they know about it. They released it, but I was unaware of it.
Okay.
I had no idea this existed. So apparently the version we watched was completely retooled by Morgan Creek Productions, which I read above. The original footage was apparently lost, but there was a VHS work print that was discovered that had a bulk of the lost footage
Okay.
that they put into this film. And so this company, Scream Factory, put out this director's cut, which it's not 100% the director's vision. Obviously, because some of that film was just gone, but it is a lot closer. And it is the director does consider this his direct sequel to The Exorcist. So we should probably watch it.
Yeah, definitely.
And this was a little quote that I grabbed from Bloody Disgusting about it. It says, Legion feels intimately connected to the 1973 classic. He's referring to the director's cut.
Okay.
While the theatrical cut is an action-packed quasi-sequel that forces connections to the original adaptation. So it does kind of do that, but I mean, we'll see.
I mean, I noticed some of the scenes and stuff were like kind of cut in, or like it seemed like the footage was different than like
it did a little bit,
like a few seconds prior. Like they added something like it was a little bit darker in some of the stuff. I don't know if it was like just
maybe different cameras or something. I don't know.
It was like
probably not.
But I mean, it wasn't noticed enough to be like, hey, this isn't the same movie.
Yeah.
Like
so you bring excellent segue, my friend.
Perfect.
So just how different are the two movies? And actually, there's not a big change apparently from this little article I read.
That's good.
Brad Dourif's performance as a Gemini killer was much longer in the director's cut. In the theatrical cut, obviously they spliced the role between him and Father Karras. You know, they jumped back and forth between the Gemini killer and him.
Yeah.
Apparently that was longer. And in the director's cut, there is no exorcism. Like I said.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that whole sequence was added.
That's crazy.
And instead, in the the director's cut, the detective Kinnerman, he makes a similar sacrifice, which brings us as like Father Karras did in the first movie. So it kind of supposed to bring it full circle.
Oh.
So it's a little bit more, you know, touchy-feely, I guess. I don't know.
I like the way that ended, though.
I like that too. I mean, I like both versions. So so which one's better then, right?
True.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's kind of, so I read up on that, which people thought was better.
Mhm.
And obviously people stand by the director's cut, saying like it's the definitive version. But you know, it's apparently it doesn't really matter. They're both pretty on the level with how good they are.
True.
So yeah. Which is interesting. So I didn't really understand why, you know, but there's this weird story where like the director is behind the movie before, like that Morgan Creek Productions made him change. He says like, I did a good job. Let me see if I could find the exact quote.
All right.
He says, it's all right. It's utterly unnecessary, and it changes the character of the piece. Although at the time, he blatantly told the press he was happy about the reshoot for the films, and he was happy to have a climax with crazy special effects. But then later on, he goes and says, you know, it's unnecessary and stuff like that. So it's kind of weird. He kind of backtracked a little bit, and then he goes back to say, like, the original version that I wanted and the original version that I developed was nothing like it. So it's kind of, he does a little flip-flop there. And so this is a little thing he says. The original story I sold to Morgan Creek and I shot ended with Kinnerman blowing away patient X, Father Karras.
Mm-hmm.
There was no exorcism, but it was a Mexican standoff between me and the studio. I was entitled to one preview, then they could go and do whatever they wanted with the picture. They gave me a preview, but it was the lowest end preview audience I'd ever seen in my life. They dragged in zombies from Haiti to watch this film. I'm not sure if that's actual people from Haiti or what. That's a quote from the director. It was unbelievable, but I decided better I should do it than anyone else. I foolishly thought I could shoot a good exorcism. I'll turn this pig's ear into a silk purse, so I did it. I never heard that term before.
Pig's ear.
I'll turn this pig ear into a silk purse. Okay. I'm going to use that every day from now on.
Oh, man.
So, again, he filmed it. He thought he did a good job. He pimped it when he was, when the movie was done. And then later on kind of recanted and said it's unnecessary, blah, blah, blah. So either way, he got what he wanted. He got his director's cut.
Yeah.
And we have both versions of the film to enjoy, of which no one is particularly better than the other.
Nope. I like that ending.
Yeah. So I kept mentioning this movie, The Ninth Configuration, right? And this is a little thing that kind of brings everything. It's kind of a fun little tidbit. Again, it's a fun fact. That's the segment we're in. So this movie is about an astronaut, who goes into space and he kind of loses his mind or what have you. So
sounds fun.
yeah, so the little breakdown is, so the gentleman who played Captain Billy Cutshaw in the movie The Ninth Configuration also was played, God damn it, let me go up the here we go. It was actor Scott Wilson in this movie.
Okay.
He played the Captain Billy Cutshaw. So Billy Cutshaw was an astronaut among the guests during the party at the McNeil residence in the original Exorcist.
Oh.
So remember how they have the party and everything, and everyone's they're singing and playing the piano and stuff like that.
Too.
Yeah, and then Reagan comes down the stairs,
pisses her pants,
urinates, and or says you're gonna die up there, and urinates, and they say, oh, she's not well and whatever.
Yeah,
that guy is the astronaut that goes nuts and commits himself to an institution in this Ninth Configuration movie and book. So it's kind of a nice little tie-in.
Yeah.
Nothing really to do with Exorcist 3, just a little bit of information I read that I thought horror fans would like.
Thanks for sharing that, Zach.
Yeah, no problem. That's your fun fact.
Yeah. Cheers.
So, yeah.
So
the movie, the budget for the movie was $11 million.
Okay.
It grossed a total of $26 million in North America, and I have two figures for this. One site said 39 million worldwide, and then another site said only 13 million worldwide. Oh. So I'm not sure which one.
That's
to believe.
Kind of a big
jump,
right? Between 13 and 39.
Mm-hmm. One was Wikipedia, and the other was IMDb. So I don't know
man.
who to believe.
Who said what?
So either way, who's counting, right?
Who said what? Did Wikipedia say?
Wikipedia said the 39 mil, and IMDb said the around 13.
Man, who do you believe more?
I don't know. That's
it's
tough.
Wikipedia. I mean, anybody can put that shit
in there. That's true. You definitely have
The director went in there. No, we made more than that. Put in 39.
So apparently, the movie, it was a box office bomb, or it performed poorly. And the director attributed this to the bad title that Morgan Creek used. So obviously, they used Exorcist 3. And the director always wanted to use the name of the novel, hence his director's cut is named Legion.
Yeah, definitely.
So apparently the movie went under a bunch of various titles, including Exorcist 1990. That would have been so cool.
Exorcist
1990. Apparently Morgan Creek Productions and Fox obviously insisted they include the word Exorcist in the title.
Okay.
So the director protested against it, and to this he said, I begged them when they were considering titles not to name it Exorcist anything, because Exorcist 2 was a disaster beyond imagination. You can't call it Exorcist 3 because people will shun the box office.
Yeah.
But they went and named it Exorcist 3. Then they called me after the third week when they were beginning to fade at the box office and said, well, we'll tell you the reason it's going to hurt. You're not going to like this. The reason the reason is Exorcist 2. So they said the reason the movie was shitty was because Exorcist 2, not the title. I couldn't believe it. I had total amnesia about my warnings.
Yeah.
That happens a lot, actually, in the corporate world.
Oh, yeah.
You tell the bigwigs something, and it's like it never happened.
They know best.
They know best. They make a lot more money than you, peasant.
Peasant boy.
So
back
anyway,
to your movie, peasant boy.
Go back to your little podcast, peasant boy. Don't bring your problems to me. So the movie was shot on location in Georgetown. It was shot in 8 weeks in mid-1989. That was cool.
Cool.
So again, all these movies, have these quick film times. It's ridiculous how fast they go.
Yeah.
Especially with horror, because I guess there's not a whole lot to do. I mean, you just kind of film the actors. There's never really any big sci-fi set pieces or anything unless you're doing like Alien or something like that. So it makes a lot of sense that these littler films would take a little bit of time. So anyway, awards and nominations for this movie. In '91, the film won the Saturn Award.
Saturn Award. Nice.
Yeah, this is another Saturn Award. It keeps popping up.
That's cool.
So won the Saturn Award for Best Writing. Was nominated for Brad Dourif was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and it was also nominated for Best Horror Film. George C. Scott was nominated a Golden Raspberry Award for Worst Actor, but lost to Andrew Dice Clay, the Dice Man, for some movie called The Adventures of Ford Fairlane. What the fuck? I've never even heard of that.
Good old Dice.
The old Dice Man.
Dude, I haven't heard of that guy in forever.
Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet. It's fucking guy.
That guy just seemed like
He was
such an asshole.
Dude, he was quintessential 90s, though. Like, that
True.
was everything about it. Like, the whole dick face, leather jacket.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Andrew
God.
Dice Clay.
Luckily, he's not around anymore to
He's-
be doing. I mean,
think
he's still
he is.
alive, but
I'm
I'm
pretty
saying
sure he is.
Is he still doing comedy at least? I mean, I hope
I
not.
probably. He was on Howard Stern for a while, too, wasn't he?
I don't know.
I don't remember.
I don't remember Dice being on there.
I don't know. I
Don't
just
know.
remember, like, Man Cow talking about him all the time, too.
Man cow.
So, anyway, back to we do this a lot, folks. Sorry.
we just drifted off.
Legion is one of the rare instances, it's talking about the director's cut, where the director's cut is shorter than the theatrical version. And that's because the entire exorcism sequence was removed. And apparently the whole Father Morning character was added in. Like that weird guy who looked like the one guy from Blade Runner.
Blade Runner.
He had the white hair all slicked back, like the android
the
from
James
Blade
Woods
Runner.
guy when he first
Yeah, he
came
kind
in the
of
door
looked
a
like
little
James
bit.
Wood
yeah.
when he came out of the elevator a little bit. So yeah, apparently that whole guy scene, that whole character was added after the fact.
Oh wow.
Yeah, kind of weird. So, all right, let's get into the oopsie daisies. I did not read any of these before this, and the reason being
Perfect.
is I did not see. This is the first time I've watched Exorcist 3.
Okay.
I've heard of it. I've watched the trailer for it and stuff. It's always been on my watch list, and I never got around to doing it. So I just copy and pasted these oopsie daisies as blindly as I possibly could, so I could read them and not have the movie spoiled. So
That's
perfect.
perfect.
And that's why I didn't talk to you about them beforehand.
Good, because I mean I didn't see any. Honestly, I can't remember anything.
I was I think I was so enthralled with what was going on the screen. Like everything was going on so fast, and
some parts were like just jumping around.
We'll get into it, but so some oopsie daisies. Apparently, the size of the bandage on the Zodiac killer, not the Gemini killer's face, changes sizes several times.
Oh, like on the nose.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's probably true. I didn't notice. When the detective connects the murder victims in this film to the case in the first movie, it's revealed that the one victim, the boy in the beginning, was connected because the mother determined that Reagan was speaking backwards on the tape from the first movie.
Oh yeah.
Backwards English, and actually in the first movie, it was a gentleman who found that out. So it wasn't the mother at all. It was another person in the movie. But I guess that could just be chalked up to I don't know, weird reconning or something. I don't know. It happens.
Just bad information.
It happens. Yeah, bad information. Yeah. Maybe that guy got it from the woman and told the doctors. Who knows?
It's like telephone. Everybody just makes up their own version along the way.
Yep. So here's another one. When the detective punches patient X, Father Karras, in the nose with his right hand, the left nostril begins to bleed and his head rocks back to the right. Later, the nurse bandages his left hand over the course of the dialogue scene. So he hit it
she's
like
spraying,
this, and then she's spraying the shit on this hand.
Yeah.
So, and again, that could be maybe he punched a wall or something, and they cut that scene. Like weird things happen in editing.
They cut it. Yeah.
So during the breakfast conversation between Father Dyer and the university president, there's an old man heading very slowly for the buffet behind the university president, and after the cut, he's disappeared. So that was just, again, cuts. Weird things happen.
Those crazy cuts.
Apparently, the car chase scene in Georgetown is like completely backwards. The geography is all wrong. Again, it's a car chase. I didn't even think to look at that, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see here. When the boy is submitted to the neurology nurse is spelling his last name. His last name starts with a K, which is a crucial hint that he might be the next victim for the Gemini killer.
Oh yeah.
And then in the German dub, apparently they spell his name as Mueller. Obviously, since the translations, they didn't. I wouldn't call that an oopsie daisy. I would just call that
just a language barrier.
Yeah, language barrier. It's a language barrier. Just chalk it up to weird things happen with translations.
Yeah, it's.
Let's see. This is cool. I did see this part. The gruesome head-cutting scissors were made for the movie and do not exist in real life.
Okay.
Thank fucking God, because it shouldn't be that easy to chop someone's head off.
No, the craziest
Those things
part
were really cool, though.
when he almost got his daughter.
Yeah,
it looked like it fucking. dug in. I'm like, oh, she's cut. She's cut.
I was thinking
But
at
no.
least it slit her throat a little
Yeah.
bit or something. But yeah, apparently they don't exist. It is said in the movie that the scissors are spring-loaded, so it takes very little effort to open them, but they produce a vicious force when being closed.
Yeah.
And apparently this is not possible. So a spring cannot produce more force when closing it as it would take to open it.
I guess that makes sense.
Damn you, physics. Always. Every time. Let's see. The movie suggests that Kinderman and Father Karras were longtime friends, but actually in the original movie, they only meet a couple of times.
It's like once a year, they said, around that time.
No,
didn't
I'm
it?
talking about Father Karras, the priest that was in the padded cell in this movie who fell down the stairs in Exorcist 1.
Oh, okay.
So that old man is supposed to be the detective that he was buddies with in Exorcist 1, kind of chummy with. But
okay.
again, in the Exorcist, they only met a handful of times. So
he
but in this
actually never
movie,
was
he
chummy.
says how he was his best friend and they loved him, or he loved him. But that could just be the movie is a closer adaptation of the novel, and the Exorcist movie is not actually as that close to the novel. So I don't know. It could be just one of those things. Maybe they padded the friendship a little bit more in the first Exorcist book, and it didn't really translate to this one. Either way, weird things. When Nurse X hits the police officer, we can see the cable hooked to him when he flies back against the wall. Okay, so Nurse X is that lady who was the old lady who was crawling, not the one crawling on the ceilings, but the one
I thought was the killer.
Yeah, the one that comes up to him in the beginning and holds his hand and stuff, and it's like, "Are you my son? No, you're not my son."
That was a test.
Yeah,
just to see if you got that part.
Let's see. Apparently, so this is in the beginning of the movie. After the priest dies in the church confessional, his hand twitches when the Detective Kinnerman puts the sheet back over his hand.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, guys. Did I move that
my
time?
hand a little bit.
Sorry.
So, yeah, that was it for the fuck ups. At least in terms of what other people on the internet told me about.
I didn't see
I
any.
didn't notice any. I'm trying to rack my brain. Thinking about it, I didn't really notice any weird things, but we'll give it a couple more watches and see.
Definitely.
Obviously not tonight or probably soon, but
next year on this time.
Year. So the Exorcist 3 initially got mixed reviews from critics. Currently holds a 56% on Rotten Tomatoes, 6.3 out of 10 on IMDb, and a 48% on Metacritic. So I always like doing these movies that kind of have this. Yeah. So this movie kind of has a bit of a cult following, just kind of like, Halloween 3 we talked about a little bit. I've always known that it was like a big, like, yo, you need to check this movie out. You need to see this. It's, if you like The Exorcist, you'll like it, and, just forgive it its few little things, but it's a solid movie is in there.
I definitely agree.
Yeah. I think it was a really, and I mentioned this to you while we were watching. I was like, holy fuck, I don't know why I didn't watch this before.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when you said Exorcist 3, I'm like, oh, great.
Yeah.
Because, like, you just think, like, by the third time of remaking a movie, it's going to be awful. But, like, this one was good because it had the mix of some funny parts and, like, the gore and everything. Like, it was good. It was really good put together.
I agree. And so, yeah, I guess we should just get into our thoughts.
Like, I thought it'd be cheesy. It was not cheesy.
You thought it'd be cheesy? Yeah, so did I. Oh, man. I was expecting a little more cheese. It was actually a pretty
shocked me
serious movie. Yeah. It was actually a pretty good, like, detective drama, like a thriller almost.
True,
I wouldn't really call it horror. Like the last maybe 20 minutes, I would call it a horror movie. But like crazy. In the beginning, I would call it like a detective thriller. You know,
which is good. You're guessing like who could it be? Who could the
killer be? And you're getting trickle fed all these little pieces, and you find out about the Gemini killer and all this stuff that he did, and how they kept certain tidbits from the news media, so when weirdos come in and confess to the crimes, they'll be able to tell who's full of shit and who's not. And they actually do that in real life.
I didn't know they actually do that.
Oh yeah,
that's pretty crazy.
Yep,
I mean, that's good thinking though.
Yeah, because dude, you get weirdos all the time coming in and are like, I did this, and like, I'm Son of Sam, or I'm, the Zodiac Killer, or what have you. And even with the JonBenet Ramsey case, that one guy, he get confessed to it, and he had like nothing to do with it.
Why would you?
Right?
Even,
I don't know.
Just to be famous. Yeah,
mental illness, man.
That's
yeah,
true.
just to be famous.
Yeah.
Like it's.
By the way, I think her brother did it.
He probably he was like
somebody...
3 at the time, but all right.
No, he was older.
Ryan, he was probably.
It's crazy. I watched.
Where were you the night of Christmas Eve?
He
or
was
whenever?
there.
He was there in Colorado. Ryan was there.
He was in the it was at the house, the family house in Boulder.
Oh, Boulder,
I know the
Colorado.
whole story.
Oh,
I know it was you. It was the brother.
It was the little brother. I have a feeling. Okay, we're not getting into it.
That's
Jesus Christ,
one.
we're gonna start getting like angry fucking messages now.
Oh,
It's a hot
hey,
button
it's bad
issue.
publicity is
Good publicity, I guess. Yeah, let's continue to talk about it.
Yeah.
Now, there's already a podcast that does that.
Oh man,
Several.
Nice.
Copycat motherfuckers.
Copycats.
Either way.
It's all good.
So I'll go first with my thoughts.
Do
so, wow. Holy shit.
Wow.
Man, I just gotta say, no, I loved it. Honestly, I was not expecting to love it. Like I said, I saw the trailers and I knew it had this little bit of a cult following, and I knew it was one of those ones I always needed to see. And I felt that this was a good opportunity to do it and explore a little bit more about the movie. And again, like I said, I love these movies that have more of a story behind the story, more than just what the movie is telling us.
True.
Like the whole thing with the director's cut and the director flip-flopping between he liked the movie he did first and then back to no, I didn't. This is my true version, what have you. You know, it's fun to learn about that stuff.
It makes for a good podcast.
It makes for a good podcast fodder,
really
definitely.
Good podcast.
So that was great to learn about all that stuff that occurred with this movie. And then just watching it, I really, like I said, I didn't consider it a horror movie up until the end. And even the end, it wasn't, obviously, it's not scary. It's The Exorcist 3, you know. But there were some definite creepy moments. You know,
the best jumpy part wasn't even supposed to be like a horror. It was just the nurse coming in the room.
I usually hate false jump scares too. Like I usually hate that shit.
I was
but
like,
it was a misdirection really because it wasn't the end of the scene. It was still, and that was done really well. I thought like the constant like So first the scene with the person giving confession and the priest there, and it just shows the dark screen and the voice like this, and it's just. Whoa, holy shit, that creeped me out, man, because nothing's more terrifying than like pitch blackness where you're just hearing things and you can't see it because your imagination is just firing off. What is back there?
For sure.
You know, I loved it. That was really creepy, and I knew that priest was going to get it, obviously.
Oh yeah.
Like you mentioned, the scene with the nurse walking into the room and hearing the ice crack, and then the guy jumping up, being like, "What the hell? You guys disturb me all the time," which is funny because honestly, when you're in the hospital,
that's probably how it is too. Right?
Dude, they come in like every 20 minutes. It's fucking ridiculous. The hospital is no place to get rest because it's just insanity, and there are never just one person chilling for a whole floor of people. Again, that's getting into the cult of Chucky criticism part, but
true.
I really enjoyed this movie. I was not expecting to like it at all. I was expecting it to be maybe one of those guilty pleasures, and I was literally pretty much in love with it up until the end. I will say, the exorcism at the end kind of threw me a little bit. I thought it was kind of lame. I thought it was cool that he threw the priest on the ceiling and peeled them off the wall. Literally, peeled them off the wall.
That was pretty cool, though.
Crazy.
I mean, to me, some of those parts were like, to me, had some sort of like symbolism. Like
it did.
If the guy wanted to live, he had to believe in Jesus that much to be peeled off the wall and dropped to the floor.
It weakened the demonic force that much that he could get through, right?
Yeah.
And then the cop being thrown against the wall, and I believe in all the gross, disgusting things in the world, and blah, and being able to kind of break the the floor getting struck by lightning like 40 times unnecessarily. Just one strike that opens it up would be enough. Jesus, but like it keeps striking the floor, and then I guess they're the victims of the Zodiac or the Gemini killer that are waving at him. I don't know what the hell that was supposed to symbolize, but man, that shit got crazy.
I think it was meant to just like tweak out the cop as he's like trying to like fight off and then,
the fire and the cobras. That was really cool too. It was like, what the hell is going on? So I just took that as like, wow, the Exorcist went here, so we have to take this exorcism and go up here.
Pretty much.
Kind of for me personally, it kind of jumped the shark a little bit. I get I get the symbolism and stuff behind it, but I thought like the director said, I felt it's unnecessary. That's gonna make me sound like a snob, and I do want to see the director's cut, but keep in mind I have not seen the director's cut, so I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying this version, I didn't care for that ending. And again, we talk about this all the time, how horror movie endings are so hard, like so hard to do. It's tough to close it up. But overall, I thought it was pretty amazing up until the last 20 minutes or so. It was great. It was a nice police drama. I thought that it had some interesting characters. There was some cool kills. There was some, clever scares. Overall, I would probably say, 7.5 to 8 out of 10. Let's go 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10?
Yeah.
I'd say about that too.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, it had, like you said, it had a lot of that good stuff. And the dialogue was funny.
Right.
And just like always seeing them like banter back and forth and yelling.
Talk about this.
And just funny things like that. And then all the like you said, the cop drama and the spooky stuff at the end. It was a good movie.
I love the cop. I love Kinderman yelling at that nurse constantly. That poor woman got berated by that man. That man was just like,
become the killer.
Yeah, really. I would have just stabbed that fucking old man in the throat just because.
Why
He's
help
so
his
mean to
hand?
her.
I know.
But he was mean to everybody. He yelled like that a lot.
Yeah. I guess that's his character.
Yeah, he was also the grandpa in Angus.
Just
so,
belting
just
out.
FYI. Another fun fact at the end of the show here. He's also the grandpa from Angus. So one of my other favorite movies.
Angus.
We should do unappreciated 90s movies and cover Angus. Let's just do a whole podcast dedicated to dissecting Angus. Have you ever seen Angus?
I don't know. Is that about a fat kid?
That is, yeah.
I'm getting glimpses in my memory of this 90s movie called Angus with a fat kid wearing a navy blue hoodie. Is that
I think it was a jacket, but yeah, pretty close. Wow. Good one. Good memory on you, Dan. That's a good noggin you got there. But yeah, again, the dialogue was great. I thought the dialogue was fantastic in this movie. Just the back and forth between the cop and the priest was so good. You could they definitely sold the whole like, hey, these guys are buddies and stuff, and that worked really well. I thought that that dynamic was great. I was actually sad when the priest died.
I know, right?
Because I was just like, oh man, that's fucked up. But talk about the kills though for a second. Wow, those kills they didn't show them at all. It was all after the fact, but the glimpses that we got of the murders and stuff that they did show us and the descriptions of them were almost more unsettling to me.
Yeah, the description was definitely like when he was talking about the blood, he was pulling all the blood out of him. It's like, oh man.
And how he talked about how he put it in the vein to the heart and he would lift the legs and it would create like a pump. And then when they were describing what he did there and how he didn't spill a drop of blood and there's not even a smudge on any of those canisters and like how perfectly clean it was. It was just like, wow, that's crazy. Like
how can
that just adds to the creepiness. Like anybody could go in there, slit someone's wrist and just run out and let them bleed to death. But this guy like took the time to systematically bleed him dry. And not only that, but put it into equal sized little cups on the side table. Like, wow, the meticulous. It's basically just saying like, look at all this time I have. You can't do anything to me.
Yeah.
Like
I can do this.
You know, they said what it took an hour. The nurse was gone for an hour or less.
True. Yeah.
And he was able to do all that.
It's nuts.
That it's basically just a bragging thing.
Yeah.
Is what he was getting at.
Pretty much.
And that's why he was saying in the cell like all the little artistic things that he does to his victims. And I thought that was really cool too. The different like the woman who got cut open and stuffed with the crucifixes. Like again, they didn't show this stuff, but the way they described it,
right
it was
away,
like
I thought of that image, like, ugh,
right,
like, tore open,
and again,
find all this stuff inside someone.
What's in your head is always going to be more terrifying to you than what you see. Like,
exactly,
you know, obviously, no one wants to see that shit. It's unsettling if it were real, but in a horror movie setting, it's interesting and fun to see how close they can get. I don't know. It's a weird dynamic. I guess I don't know. But
I
again,
know what you mean. Yeah,
your brain is always going to be scarier than what anybody can show you, and they did a good job of that by just giving us glimpses of the murder scene and just explaining to it, like the one with the kid with crucified to the oars.
The oars.
That was awesome. Like the way they described how his head was cut off, and its place was the head of Jesus with black face, and there was there was steel ignats in his eyes, and it's just like,
and they actually showed that
they
at the
showed
end
that
too.
at the
It's
end.
like,
Yeah,
oh,
that was just
exactly what they
crazy.
described.
Just the way they outlined it was awesome. And then the way that the cop was explaining the Gemini calling cards, how it's on the hand, and he always removes the one finger, like all these little things. The details were more unsettling to me than I thought. It was great. I loved it.
The
like
nurse one was crazy too. When she walks out of the room and then right behind her,
it's the guy with the scissors or whoever.
Scissors.
And I loved how they never showed us like who the killers were. Like, obviously they,
because he's like hacking into their brain with his brain.
And I love that how they had like, well, there was 3 murders and 3 different killers because he could just zone out and jump into a body. And,
right? Isn't that nuts? He just meditates his way through.
Yeah, and obviously he probably used that nurse X lady or whoever, the old lady, more often than not, because he said the catatonic ones are so easy to control, But I just thought that was really cool. It was an idea that really hadn't been explored, at least in nothing that I had seen before.
Same here, yeah.
They kind of borrowed that same concept from that movie. I think it was called Fallen. No, I don't know. It was the one where the guy sings the song, and that's how the detective knew it was him, and he was able to jump bodies.
Oh, really?
Fuck, it was Denzel Washington was in it, I think. Damn.
It
was a good little,
sounds cool.
Good little thriller. We'll have to find it. But yeah, he would always sing this tune. It was like, time is on my side. Yes, it is. And that's how the detective knew, like, you're the killer.
You're the guy.
So I don't know. We should watch that too. Add it to the list. So yes. What are we talking about? Denzel. So we are well past our 30-minute mark. So I think we did all right.
Yeah.
Check out Exorcist 3. I should have mentioned this at the top of the show, but it's streaming now on Amazon Prime.
Go now.
And if you've seen the director's cut, hit us up on social media. Let us know let us know what you thought about this movie. Just talk to us about anything. We're desperate for attention. So
we love talking about this stuff.
And we do love talking about this stuff.
It was a great movie. So
it was a great movie.
Keep the conversation going.
Exorcist 3, 8 out of 10 for Zach.
I'd say 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10 for Kyle.
Not out of 10. Not 10.
Not 10 out of 10.
But,
wow.
I mean, 8 is pretty good for this movie.
I think so, too.
Especially for a third. A third of anything is...
yeah. And then eventually we'll get around to the prequels and all that fun stuff and watch...
Eventually.
We'll watch Exorcist 2, I guess. Oh, not looking forward to that one.
Maybe.
So, yes, don't forget to follow us on social media.
Yes.
High Horror Society at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram,
YouTube,
LinkedIn. I don't know if we're on LinkedIn.
Podbean
and all that crap.
And this one will be up on Podbean Friday.
This one will be up on Podbean Friday.
We're going to try to stream every Monday, 9:30?
I don't know. We probably should have been paying attention. Oh, were you writing stuff to people too?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Your wife was commenting.
Hi.
So she's talking to us. And
cool.
Yeah, come hang out with us while we stream. We're going to try to do it Mondays at
9:30ish.
9:30ish, and we'll have the chat live. We can talk to you. We can see how many people are watching us, which is probably still Laura.
Hi, honey.
Hi, Laura. So, yeah, please join us. And, Exorcist 3.
Exorcist 3. Go check it out.
Peace.
It's the High Horror Society. It's the High Horror Society. Oh, yeah. It's the High Horror Society.